Hey guys, it's Angel, welcome back to the channel, and today we're looking at an Italian stallion. And no, not Sylvester Stallone. This is the Bellanca Super Viking by Lionheart Simulations. Now, yes, you'll get why I say this in a second, but the Viking and Super Viking were a series of light, single-engine, four-seat, high-performance retractable gear aircraft manufactured in the US between 1960s and 1970s. A lot of this was done in Minnesota, I think it was. Minnesota? Yeah. Now, the aircraft was developed through many modifications of classic designs based on the aviation pioneer Giuseppe Bellanca, whose company this was. Now, 1,350 Vikings were produced over that period of time, between 68 and 75, and it's a derivative of the Bellanca Cruiser, which was a retractable gear tail dragger with two extra vertical fins to kind of stabilise that out. A much older aircraft from the 30s, designed by Giuseppe Bellanca again. Now, this development is a very similar one, in fact, surprisingly, because it is a metal frame covered in fabric with wood and wings that are also fabric covered. So she's disgustingly light, with a 300 horsepower Continental IO 540 engine. Yes, disgustingly light plus humongous engine. This is the epitome of American muscle, if it was designed by an Italian. So there you go. Now, the aircraft itself is comes in terms of features from Lionheart. You've got 4K liveries. Here they are, quite a few of them. You've got some different panel variations in there as well, some different colours of the background panel and interior. And you will also find that you do get Asobo stock sounds for, I believe, the Bonanza, but they're upfront about that, so that's fine. A lot of the instrumentation is also Asobo as well, which means it's working well, it's clear, it functions. You know what, I'll call that a bonus. Price-wise, it's down from £20 on the marketplace to £9 for me, so that's a pretty reasonable price already. So we're looking at a decent price on the low end, and it's just being honest about having things like the default sound pack. Fair enough, I can dig that. The autopilot, however, is not stock. You'll like that one. It's the Continental 3, which is quite a nice one. Now, in terms of performance, this thing is quite spicy. We mentioned its weight, by the way. It's about 1,000 kilograms. Yeah, 2,200 pounds. With a max takeoff weight of 3,300. So you got about 1,100 pound useful load, which is pretty good. Now this thing at 75% power will do 163 knots cruise. Stalls at 61 knots. You can get up to about 196 if it tries. Range of 802 nautical miles. Landing and takeoff to 50 feet. Within about 1,400 feet. So pretty decent, actually. Now, being very, very light, with a huge engine, and that's again the Continental IO 520 and 540s, depending on the version, with a 2 or 3 blade Macaulay constant speed prop, gives you an aircraft that's incredibly spicy in its performance, a very snappy roll rate, big control surfaces, very light, especially in the wings. So that makes a big difference. Now, in terms of what we get with this one, obviously we get that, as I mentioned, the Century 3 autopilot, which is kind of cool. We don't see enough of those in the sim. Let's go inside and take a look here. In fact, we'll go outside first. There we go. Now, we said about the fabric covering, which makes it a very smooth surface. Obviously, you can see there's the kind of sparring there. A very big tail surface comparatively. Kind of Rockwell Commander-y almost looks to it to an extent. But one of the things I always liked about the Bellanca was this huge landing light in the front of the kind of the gear well on the wing. Now, Lionheart has put some flubbers out, I won't lie. There's been some aircraft that I've not been particularly huge fans of, but I did like the Bucky Youngman that they released. I actually really did like that one. That was a fun little plane. Now, detailing on the exterior model is pretty decent. Now, they made one of these for FSX and P3D, of course. So I would be interested to see. This is a good similarity in terms of what they look like. So probably a good bit got used across between the two. So GPS antenna. So again, it's a very smooth exterior, but that is actually accurate to the aircraft. Texturing is nothing crazy, but it's also not bad either. I'll give them credit where it's due. Could be far worse. At least the decals are actually separated items as well, which makes them more visible. Okay, let's take a look inside. Now, this isn't one of their strongest suits with Lionheart, but it is a one-man team. The interiors have different colours, and this kind of confined look is quite similar to the real one, from the pictures I could see. Now, you'll see here these bars and bars here, because that's the metal frame. Yeah, this is fabric covered with an interior set in. And this interior is so 70s it screams. Like, it really screams. Just, wow. The volume of kind of that ruched kind of fabric, and you can almost feel the plasticky bus seat leather. Oh, God. Yeah, it's like mushrooms and flares. Okay, so fuel tank is set to left. We've got left, right, both. We've got aux. We've got off. We'll move our yokes. Now, a cool thing that I've really quite liked from Lionheart is the placards. I can click the checklist placard there, and that can show up for us. Want to know how to use the Sentry autopilot and want to know how to go back to the manual? Look at this. A pop-up showing you everything in terms of how this works. Kind of useful. Want some information placard? Information placard. Pretty useful, actually. I'll give them credit. That's a nice little feature. So let's turn the batteries on and our avionics on. We'll leave those avionics off for a second. Let's put on our fuel pump. Put in our mixture. Okay, it's cracked the throttle. And let's get her ready to start, shall we? So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the Bonanza sounds. I'm pretty sure. It might not be. Avionics coming on. Power flaps, of course, there. Down here, around the exhaust. So everything's coming online for us right now. We have, of course, our panel lighting here, which is a scroll system. Let's go with some lighting and turn it to dark. Where is that? I can't even see it now. That's our instrument backlighting. Panel lighting. Dome lighting from above. And of course, scalable, so we can set it where we want it to be. As little or as much visibility as we want. So, decent enough lighting for night time. There's nothing to write home about, but it's not bad either. Now, I have taken this around the block at least once so far, and I will say the flight model is one of the things I actually rather like about this aircraft. Now, in terms of the GPS system, this is very much, I believe, the usual one we have. It's the stock sim one. We'll take a look at the autopilot once we get up in the air. So, let's knock that off. Let's get my head switched on here. And it is a little constrained, but it's not terrible. In terms of the door, by the way, you'll notice we can open that there. I don't think we get a sound difference. No sound difference, but it is what it is. Of course, we've got our storm window here. We do get a sound difference from that, though. So, small nuances. This is the way we want to go to the runway. Okay, so in terms of flight model, she's very spicy as an aircraft. She's got a lot of power for very low weight, which does mean you have a lot to really think ahead with in terms of this aircraft. It is very much, like I said, a bit of a muscle car. But an Italian-designed muscle car, built in America. It's a weird combination. It's like if Fiat built the Charger. So, or designed the Charger, at least. It's a horrible idea to think about, but it really does work in practicality. You'd have a really gorgeous-looking Dodge Charger. Not that it's already not pretty, but either way. We'll go to takeoff flaps here. And we'll get her going. Now you're going to watch this thing just leap forward on the runway here. With a lot of spice in its step. And it's already wanting to lift itself up here. As we pull away. Now I'm going to go third person for our gear retraction, because this is a bit of a weird one. It does them one at a time. So gear coming up. We've got right, then you've got left, and main at the same time as left. So one main gear at a time. It's a surprisingly attractive exterior appearance on the Super Viking, actually. And I just love that double lamp look in the front of the gear wells. it has almost a fighterish rake to the aircraft, I think. I don't know what it is that really draws me to it. And I just love the tube frame interior. It gives a real kind of kick to the aircraft. Now, in terms of the autopilot here, we need to factor in that you have to turn on roll for a start and heading to get heading functionality. Now, I didn't set the heading, which I probably should have done beforehand. Now, as you'll notice there, we have multiple control inputs on the top. Is that straightening us out now? So you'll notice we have, up here, we have nav, we have heading, Omni is our GPS, that is our approach, and that is back course. So nav, GPS, heading, approach, back course. So to get any kind of directional input, you have roll turned on, which is essentially master, heading on, and then this controls which is the source, whether it be the heading bug, GPS, nav data source, approach or back course, and then this obviously will hold our altitude, hold it at mind, and we set it with pitch. So we'll turn the autopilot off for now. We'll turn ourselves around here. My flaps up. Yes, they are. I don't know what it is, but the world of flight seems looking very green at the moment, and it seems that the last small update, everything seems more vibrant. It's weird. I can dig it, but it's just a bit weird. Now bring her round here, and we should be looking good. You'll notice, for a GA aircraft, very snappy roll rate. Can we go all the way over the top? We can. Not what I expect out of the Mooney or Bonanza class of aircraft, but there you go. And it has got similar performance and characteristics to those aircraft, although a little bit slower than the Bonanza, of course, and the Mooney, but lighter. Which means you can get a similar performance for lower fuel costs, which is always nice. Not that that matters in the sim, of course. None of that will affect us, of course. By the way, you do have down here park mode, which will turn on chocks and tie downs and such for you on the aircraft when you're parked and stopped with the engine off. Now, the manual that's included in the aircraft currently is the version from the 2000, or the FSX P3D version. So there are some things in there that it can't do, or it doesn't do, or refers to features it doesn't have. Like the instruments being without glass and clickable, pop-out, 2D XML gauges. They're clearly not. It's for the FSX version, so you'll have to take it with a pinch of salt. The rest of the details in terms of how to use the aircraft are current and accurate, but it is what it is. In terms of textures, the interior is not amazing, but it's definitely not bad. I've seen far, far worse, and it's one of, I think, Lionheart's better ones. They've definitely made worse. I'll leave it at that. They have made worse. This is definitely not bad. I personally find the view forward restricted, but it's accurate. It's authentic to the real aircraft. This is actually how it is. I don't mind it, but I just don't personally prefer it. You know, if I was going to fly an aircraft in this category, it's most likely going to be the A28 Comanche, just based on its functionality, the system's depth. Of course, this does have working doodads, breakers, which are very nice, and everything is clickable, but I'm just not a massive fan of the view out the front. That's it, just the view. Like, that's my complaint, is a personal preference there, nothing that the developer's actually done in that regard. So we're going to get ourselves turned around here and drop down and make an approach. I think it isn't... It's certainly one of the better ones. This and the Youngman, I think, are the two best ones we've had so far from Lionheart. I have yet to spot any major bugs. The price is very reasonable, meaning that things like default sounds I can actually overlook fairly. I'm not a big fan of how pale a lot of the panels are compared to things like the radio stack. I'd have liked it to be darker. That's just a personal aesthetic preference deal. Gear coming down. And I love that clamshell kind of gear door. Love that. We need some power on here. She'll drop her nose very, very readily, by the way, when you actually take off the power. You know what? We're gonna. It says apparently this big tail for means she doesn't spin. Let's test that theory. Let's get dirty. So full flaps, low power, nose up. We're in full dirty configuration. I'm just gonna try and slop this along and see what it does. Gonna hold the nose here. This is way too low to be doing this kind of thing, and I'm holding my gear in. Oh no, she spins. She wants to spin, or she wants to drop a wing at least, and that probably would have gone into a spin or at least a stall. So yes, it will spin. Whoopsie, found that one out. Should have got higher. Wasn't willing to let it go further than that. So you do need a little bit of power to drag her in on final if you're using full flaps. I don't personally think we need full flaps, so we'll drop it to 1 notch, which is takeoff flaps. Yeah, I think in terms of what Lionheart's created, this is one of their better works, along with the Youngman, which also had default sounds, by the way. Again, some of the sounds aren't terrible. An IO 540, 520 engine, they do sound very similar between the two versions. Obviously different prop and such configurations. And you'd also have different sound, let's not forget, inside the cockpit of the aircraft. Exterior-wise, it doesn't sound great at all. But again, default sounds. Inside the cockpit, you have different sound between, for example, a Bonanza, with its all-metal construction, and the fabric-covered Super Viking. So there is that. Also, the name Viking and Super Viking came along because of a huge percentage of Scandinavian residents in Minnesota in the 60s and 70s, so there you go. In terms of actual landing performance, she is very predictable. Like, we're just flying it down to the runway now. Nice and gentle. We're aiming right for the touchdown point. They're just past the threshold. It'll be nice and easy. Just to avoid those trees. As I come in a little bit too low there. Little float. But I'll put it down nice and gentle. And we're down. Little spirited on the brakes, but more than manageable. I'm just giving a little bit of left brake there to keep it straight on the runway. A little bit of both. And we should be able to clear off the active here. And taxi to parking. Knock that fuel pump off, a little bit quieter ride. For its really, really reasonable price, I think it's got a lot of potential. Marketplace exclusive, so it's only on there from what I've seen so far. I was sent a copy of this by Bill from Lionheart, and I was straight up with him saying that if I find faults, I'll mention them. Like I said, the manual is outdated. That's one thing. But to be fair, all the information you do actually need in the manual is there. It's just got stuff in that's not relevant to this version. I like the autopilot. It's cool, it's different, it's unique. Textures are fine. In terms of clickable stuff, it's definitely up there. Overall, it's not a bad looking aircraft, not a bad performing aircraft. I personally don't like the view out the front windshield. That's a personal thing due to the shape of the aircraft, but it's realistic. I think the glass is a little bit dark on the instruments is probably one thing I'd say. I think I'd like that to be a bit more transparent. It's a bit milky. But that's about it. Maybe darker panels. But that's me griping. I'm looking for reasons here. It's not bad. Again, I'm not an expert. I've never flown a real plane. I can't tell you how authentic it is in terms of how it flies. I will say when you pull the power off, it drops like a rock. Not implausible, but it is a relatively slippery aircraft, so who knows. It's not bad. And for the price, I'd say it's definitely worth a punt if you like your complex GA singles. For the price, it's definitely worth a stab. Well, that is the Lionheart Super Viking. A rather nifty little plane. And wait, was I on the wrong side? I'm on the wrong side. Why am I on that side? Why am I sitting on the right? And wait. Look at who is there. That little rat bastard. Captain Whiskers is flying the plane. And on that bombshell, goodbye.